youtube.com/Bryan Fonseca. I work weekends, so I haven't had time to get to this video, but I've been itching to get to it. Daniel Dubois knocks out Anthony Joshua. I've been debating how I was going to react to this on the channel. Let's start here with the video that I recorded for Action Network for one of my day jobs. In previewing this fight, here was one of the things I had to say. The other piece of this is I want to bet Daniel Dubois, and he is a big underdog. And I think that he has more of a puncher's chance than the books are letting up. I think it's more likely that Anthony Joshua wins the fight, but there's not a ton of value on getting there. So I want to sprinkle maybe 1/10 of a unit, 2/10 of a unit at most, something very light, on Daniel Dubois to get the stoppage, because Anthony Joshua's been on the receiving end of this before, and also Daniel Dubois is several years younger than Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua is in his mid-30s. Daniel Dubois is plus 600 to get the stoppage here. I want some of that. I just want a little bit. Okay, from a purely betting perspective, I had over 1.5 knockdowns, and I also had that. But that's not why we're here. We're here to react to this and discuss what we learned from this experience. With Daniel Dubois going into the fight, a lot of people thought that he was going to get his ass whooped. He did not do that. He landed on Anthony Joshua early. I was worried about what would happen once he landed on Anthony Joshua's chin, which we saw play out immediately. AJ did not react well. It seemed like he didn't have his footing for the entire fight. And as he was getting it back in round 5, by this point, Daniel Dubois already knocked him down multiple times. He lands a right hand, backs Daniel Dubois up, staggers him, comes forward, goes to throw an uppercut. Anthony Joshua's left hand is really low, and Daniel Dubois times it and floors him for what became the final time in the fight. And Anthony Joshua was knocked down. I think they recorded 4 knockdowns in the fight in totality. I think that's the official number. There was 3, there was 4, it looked like there could have been 5, but he's now been knocked down nearly 10 times in his career. I've wondered about this because going into the fight, Daniel Dubois was seen as a big underdog despite the age difference. And typically in boxing history, when two guys aren't that far apart in skill sets and aren't that far apart just in terms of overall quality, the younger guy tends to win more often than the older guy. And Daniel Dubois is entering the prime of his career, or is starting the prime of his career. He's 27 years old. Anthony Joshua is in his mid-30s at this point, closer to retirement than he would be to his debut. We'll see how much time Daniel Dubois has left, but no question, he is peaking at the right time. He also is somebody who was written off. Early on in his career, he has a bout with Joe Joyce. He gets knocked out. People thought he quit, orbital bone. It was a fight that he appeared to be winning. He was winning on multiple scorecards, and he was stopped very late, the 10th round. It was for the British heavyweight title, the Commonwealth heavyweight title, the European heavyweight title, etc. Like, it was for a bunch of those stepping stone championships. And we saw what happened with Joe Joyce after. He won an interim championship not long after that and ended up losing to Zhilei Zhang multiple times, but still got to an interim championship, had a great win over Joseph Parker, knockout victory. Looked like he was going to be a star, and kind of was, but that came and went very quickly. Now, at this moment, Daniel Dubois and Alexander Usyk are the only 2 men to have legitimate heavyweight championships. Daniel Dubois only has the IBF. Usyk has all the other ones that we care about. Daniel Dubois, though, has a heavyweight title. It teaches us a few things. One, you don't have to be undefeated, especially in this division, but in general, you don't have to be undefeated to be somebody who's going to win a title. Like, we write guys off very quickly. He's skilled, but he also has immensely devastating power. He gets 4 straight wins leading up to the Alexander Usyk fight, and this actually culminates, the winning streak does, with a victory over Kevin Lerena, where it looked like Daniel Dubois was done. 3 knockdowns in the first round against Kevin Lerena, who doesn't have a ton of power. It looked like Daniel Dubois was headed for where people thought he was going to go after the Joyce fight and into heavyweight obscurity, so to speak. That would have been a major, major upset loss. He loses to Alexander Usyk. By the way, a lot of people thought that he could have won on a body shot knockout. That ended up being a low blow, officially. Ultimately, the decision was made for Alexander Usyk to continue to fight. He took his sweet ass time. He ends up knocking out Daniel Dubois later on. But Daniel Dubois has multiple impressive victories against Jarrell Miller and against Filip Hrgović. He was an underdog against Filip Hrgović and ends up winning the IBF interim heavyweight title. And Filip Hrgovic had a win over Zhilei Zhang that was questionable at best in the lead up to that. But still, a lot of people were super enamored with how Anthony Joshua looked coming into this fight. Daniel Dubois' winning streak was more impressive and he beat better competition. Then we look at Anthony Joshua and his winning streak leading up to this fight, before we even get into the history of it. Anthony Joshua beats Jermaine Franklin, who I like and think is very underrated, and thought he beat Dillian Whyte. He got a lot of credit for that performance. He boxed well. It was a unanimous decision victory. Then he beats Robert Helenius. We were supposed to get Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte couldn't stay off the PEDs. So we get Robert Helenius on less than a week's notice. The week before, he fought in a castle, I believe in Finland, where he's from, won by knockout, and somehow made it to round 7 inexplicably of this fight. Now, Anthony Joshua could have been carrying him, toying with him, whatever the case may be, but we saw Robert Helenius months prior lose to Deontay Wilder on the 4th punch that Deontay Wilder landed on the fight. 3rd or 4th punch that he landed in the fight. It was in the 1st round. Why was Robert Helenius going into round 7 against Anthony Joshua on less than a week's notice in that fight? Even though he wasn't necessarily winning rounds, but why was that happening? Otto Wallin, tough heavyweight, known for pushing Tyson Fury, and Otto Wallin is a skilled heavyweight, and I thought he potentially was going to give Anthony Joshua problems in that fight. He did not, which then led me to believe, all right, maybe we gave him too much credit for the Tyson Fury performance, because Otto Wallin cut Tyson Fury. It was a very bad cut, pushes him to 12 rounds, and ends up losing a respectable decision. And he overachieves in a Tyson Fury fight, and Anthony Joshua destroys him. 5th round, there's a stoppage. And speaking of guys who overachieved against Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou, who was the last fight leading up to this Daniel Dubois bout for Anthony Joshua. Now, Francis Ngannou, I've said this here, I've said this on a mandatory with Chantel and I boxing show that I do here on YouTube, said this at the New York Post, said this at Action Network, said this Sports Grid, any platform that I went on to talk about this fight that had me as a guest or that I was hosting or that I was whatever my role was. I said, we gave, not me, but we, the societal we, so to speak, but the analysts, whomever talking about boxing, gave Francis Ngannou too much credit for his performance against Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury showed up overweight. It was the heaviest he's, I think, ever been for a fight, or among the heaviest he's ever been for a fight, one or the other. Clearly didn't take it seriously. He says he was training leading up to that fight. That was probably bullshit. If he wasn't training that seriously. Because a real focused Tyson Fury, we saw against Alexander Usyk in terms of being in shape, in terms of how he boxed. I thought he was beating Alexander Usyk until he got rocked and that fight changed. He looked great leading up to that, and then ended up losing a split decision. It was still a very competitive fight, and we're going to get the rematch, and it's probably going to be a great rematch. But Francis Ngannou knocks down Tyson Fury, who looked like he did not take that fight seriously. The difference, Anthony Joshua took that fight very seriously and destroyed Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou could continue boxing, and there are probably some guys that he can hang with, not at the top level, but there probably are some guys that he can hang with. Like, there's no disrespect at all, but he is a top flight, Anthony Joshua, top flight heavyweight boxer until this past weekend. And now, full circle, Daniel Dubois, he beat better opposition leading up to this fight. We probably gave Anthony Joshua too much credit for how great he looked leading up to this fight. Because if you just parse through who he actually defeated, what we gave them credit for, how high we were on them, again, that's like Jermaine Franklin is good. Otto Wallin is good from a contender perspective. Like, Otto Wallin to me is a legitimate contender. Robert Helenius, not so much. Francis Ngannou, not so much. Jermaine Franklin, I think like there are some heavyweights he can give problems to. But we would all acknowledge that Anthony Joshua is a cut above all of those guys. Daniel Dubois, he is supposed to be better than, but this chin, we've seen it go. We've seen him get rocked by Dillian Whyte. We've seen him get rocked by Alexander Povetkin. We've seen him lose to Andy Ruiz. We've seen him get dropped by Vladimir Klitschko. We've seen these things. And this is why I thought for all those years, if Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua fought, which if they make that fight now, I feel like some people would be interested. I don't know how interested I would be because I think Deontay Wilder shot. But I thought peak Deontay Wilder, peak Anthony Joshua, when this was rumored in the mid to late 2010s, I thought Deontay Wilder would win because I never trusted Anthony Joshua's chin. I acknowledge that Anthony Joshua's a better all-around boxer. But if you hit the dude hard enough, we've seen what could happen. With Anthony Joshua, I still think he's a draw. I still think if he's going to continue boxing, and he says he does want to, I think he's going to continue to get big fights. If Tyson Fury loses to Alexander Usyk, people will want to see Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. People would want to see Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder right now. I'm not sure you're doing that in Wembley Stadium, but I think people will pay for that fight. You can talk yourself into Anthony Joshua being competitive with 99% of other heavyweights, most other heavyweights, because of his boxing ability. You're just worried about his chin. If he fights Martin Bakole, I think people will be scared of that. If he fights Joseph Parker again, because he fought Joseph Parker and beat him a long time ago, does that fight go any differently? If he fights Zhilei Zhang, whose stamina is concerning, are we worried about Anthony Joshua's chin? Yeah, probably. But could Anthony Joshua beat a Jared Anderson? Yeah, probably. This is where he sort of is now. It's not gatekeeper status necessarily, and he can be a contender and he can compete at a high level, but you're always going to be worried about that chin. You should have been to this point, quite frankly. And I think if he wins a heavyweight title again, it might be gift wrapped because he's not beating Alexander Usyk if they fought a third time. I don't think he beats Tyson Fury, but I'd watch the fight. I don't think he beats Daniel Dubois in a rematch, and I'd be worried about how he would look against some of the other top heavyweights who have legitimate power. As for Daniel Dubois, he has the power that could change a fight against anybody. We already saw what it looks like him versus Usyk, but if Alexander Usyk beats Tyson Fury again, the fight to make in the heavyweight division is probably Usyk versus Dubois too. And if I'm Usyk, why not do it at Wembley Stadium? Why not? I don't think Dubois is going to beat him by decision, but you have to worry about that power, which Usyk already navigated through in their first fight. But Dubois has more confidence now. He's beaten 3 good heavyweights since then. Jarrell Miller, who I thought beat Andy Ruiz, but they robbed him and scored it a draw. But, that might be karma, some would say. You have Alexander Usyk, who would fight a Daniel Dubois who beat Filip Hrgović. So this is post that. And then obviously post Anthony Joshua. Daniel Dubois is over the moon right now. He has to be. And I think he has the power to beat any heavyweight in the world. I still don't think he's better than Usyk. We'll see where Tyson Fury's at in that fight. If Tyson Fury wins, wouldn't Tyson Fury versus Daniel Dubois be great? We'd probably get the trilogy between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk first. But Tyson Fury versus Daniel Dubois at Wembley Stadium? Yeah, a lot of people would watch that. And that'd be a very fun, captivating fight because we've seen Tyson Fury get dropped several times throughout the course of his career. Daniel Dubois could end him with that power, or he can get outboxed for 12 rounds because Tyson Fury could still be that guy as long as he remains upright and takes a fight seriously. There are just so many fun possibilities in the heavyweight division right now that this knockout it was good for boxing, honestly, because there are so many things you can do now. What sucks is that we didn't get peak Tyson Fury versus peak Anthony Joshua. We didn't get peak Anthony Joshua versus peak Deontay Wilder. Like, there are a number of heavyweight fights that we didn't get at the highest level that we should have gotten, peak versus peak. But in terms of moving forward, there are a lot of heavyweights in the mix right now. Alexander Usyk, Tyson Fury, Daniel Dubois, Joseph Parker, Najit Caballel, Zhilei Zhang, who just beat Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua still want to box. Martin Bakole just got a big win over Jared Anderson. Richard Torres Jr. is on his way. He's not there yet. He's not here yet, but he will be. Jarrell Miller probably should have gotten a win over Andy Ruiz. What's he going to do next? What's Andy Ruiz going to do next? There are a lot of interesting fights in the heavyweight division to make that legitimately could go either way. And ultimately, I think that's good for boxing. So hopefully we get some of these fights and not let things marinate too long, like Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua, like Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury, because then we run the risk of guys playing spoiler, especially in this division where a lot of guys have knockout power and enough knockout power to end big money fights that are supposed to be on the horizon that probably should have happened already. Look out for my content here, Action Network, New York Post Sports, and anywhere else that you can find me. Follow, like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys again very soon. Take care.